we were talking about, Chase mentioned Camp Cottle this morning. Until last year, I'd been one of the directors of the Teen Week at Camp Cottle for years. Some of you were actually counselors in that at different times. Hillary's shaking her head. She was a counselor, I remember, a couple of years. But we did this camp for teenagers, and this was probably about 12 or 13 years ago. And we were doing this theme, and part of what we did one day is we actually fasted with the teenagers for one day. And we did. It wasn't like a forced fast. Like, we had, peanut butter and jelly and fruit and stuff available for anybody that needed it or wanted to. But we didn't. We suspended our normal meals. We did a different sort of day that day, and we fasted together during that day at camp, which is a challenging thing to do at a summer camp. Well, it had come to almost the moment where we were going to break the fast. We had not had breakfast and lunch. We were going to have dinner, and it was going to be a feast. Our cooks had just prepared. They had only had one meal to prepare that day, and so they had prepared this big old feast for us to have as we broke that fast with the camp. And we were about to have this little period of worship and reflection right before the meal. And me and Bobby Cruz, he was a local youth minister here at the time, and we were working together. And he was like, "Man, I'd like to do something before we break the fast. That'd be something good and helpful and memorable." And he mentioned, he loved these dumb games. He would do these gross games. And one of the things that he had in his pile of stuff was a can of Spam. Okay, he brought this can of Spam. He didn't even know what he was going to do with it, but he had brought it because it's just one of those kind of semi-gross things that you do in dumb games. And so he's like, "I got this can of Spam." Now, apologies to all of you if there are any of you who are like Spam fans. Okay, I'm going to speak in about Spam in some unflattering ways a little bit. But if you like Spam, I love you, and that's just great. I'm glad you like Spam. But Spam is kind of known as sort of a mystery meat. It's that can. It's sort of like the Velveeta of meats. Processed meat food. That kind of thing. So anyway, he had this can of Spam, and we just hatched a plan. Okay, let's do this. And so everybody, all the kids gathered for this final time of reflection before we broke our fast, and we had the can of Spam on a little table set off to the side and said, "Okay, here in about 30, 40 minutes, we are going to break our fast with just an incredible feast that we're going to have together. It's going to be a great time." But we realize that a lot of you are really hungry right now. And we want to just offer, if anybody would like to have this can of Spam and eat it now, rather than have your feast later, then we just want to give the opportunity. Would anybody like to just break their fast and eat this Spam now? And of course, some teenage boy goes, "I'll take it, I'll take it." So this teenage boy comes down, he sits down at the table, we give him a spoon, and he starts eating his Spam. And we continue on with our time of worship and reflection and stuff and prayer, and he's eating his Spam. So we finish. Everybody's okay. It's time to go break the fast. Everybody started heading out to the feast, and this boy was just finishing his entire can of Spam. And he looked up and he said, "I feel sick." And that just became that experience was just a parable to me of how we trade what we really, really want for something that we desire in the moment. I want this now. I'm going to get this now. And I end up trading it for something that deep down I desire so much more. It's so easy to do. So easy to satisfy my hunger, satisfy my thirst right now with something quick and cheap and easy than it is for me to decide what is it that I truly, truly desire. What do I truly, truly need? And am I willing to wait? Am I willing to work for that which is truly good in my life? This last couple of weeks, we have been talking a lot about our motives and how so many of the time we are fueled, we are driven by our temporary human, self-centered desires. And we asked last week this question, what is driving me? Okay? What is driving me to work the way I work? What is driving me to achieve what I'm trying to achieve? What is driving me in my relationships with my spouse if I'm married? With my kids if I have kids? What is driving me in my relationships with my other family, with friends? What is driving me in my relationships with people who are not my friends? What fuels my life? Because what is natural, what just comes to us naturally, is for our surface level, self-centered, temporary desires to just drive our lives. And when that happens, we miss out on what we really, really want, on what we deeply desire. We talked last week about how Jesus, when he was asked what the greatest commandment was, how he didn't reply with a thing to do or a thing not to do, but he said, what you need, what is the most important thing, the most important command is for you to have a motive. And that motive is for you to love God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, and let that love for God drive everything you do. That the motive behind what you do be a love for God. And along with that, Jesus made sure not to leave out, along with that is a love for people, because you can't really love God unless you love the people He loves. And so, love for God and love for people is to drive your life. And you and I know how wonderful that sounds and how difficult that is, because our surface level desires are so right there and are so powerful so much of the time. Our desires for pleasure want to drive our... Now, I want to say right now, God created this world with good things and with pleasurable things and with things for you to enjoy. And He wants His people to enjoy good things in this earth. One of the mistakes that people who are devoted Christians tend to make is that, I guess to be really spiritual, I need to deprive myself from all pleasure. And that is the exact wrong deal. God created good things for His people to enjoy. Your desire for food is necessary, good desire, as long as it is kept in its God-desired, God-designed realm. It can get out of hand. Your desire for sex is a desire that God created, that is good and is part of His plan for this world and for intimacy and marriage and for kids. But that again, as long as that is kept within His plan, that is good, and yet that desire can take over and drive us. Our desire for escape, for getting away from pain that's in our life, and we try to wash it away with work, with busyness, with food, with drink, with drugs, with relationships. And we run, and that desire drives our lives and ruins our lives if we allow it to. But when we take those desires that God has placed in us, and those pleasures that are in this world, and when we could take control of those pleasures and those desires, rather than let them drive us, rather than let them control us, then God uses those for good. None of those things, those pleasures, are inherently evil. But all of them, when placed in the driver's seat of our lives, will sabotage our lives and prevent us from getting what we really want. Because what we really want, what you really want, I know this about you, I know this about me, because we are all the same in this way. What you really, really want is you want peace. You want satisfaction. You want rest. You want relief from the tension of who you want to be and how you are living. You want to be at rest. You want love. You want to really be loved and to love. That is a desire that is at the core of you. You want joy. You want a sense of, you want a happiness that is not dependent on things being good in your life, on how people are treating you, about how things are going. You want a sense of real and lasting joy that is, you desire that. And those are the desires that God has placed deep within us, because really what we desire is we desire God. I desire God. I desire to experience everything He is. I desire to experience all that He wants me to experience as His child, because He wants me to have His peace, His love, and His joy. He desires that for me, and that's what I desire. But so easily, what I really, really want gets drowned out by what I desire in the moment. And that brings us to this next proverb. We've been going through the book of Proverbs in the Bible, these little short, wise sayings that are packed with so much life. And so let's look at this little proverb together. Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. In the wild days of ancient Middle East, if you had a city that was worth being called a city, you built a wall around it. And if it was a good city, you built 2 walls around it. You had an inner wall and an outer wall. And you had towers that were built into that wall where soldiers could get and could defend. You had this complex of gates that would keep people from being able to get into the gate without just being annihilated. You had a sturdy wall if you were going to be a city, because if you didn't, then any old raiding band of tribe of people could sweep on into your town during the night, kill all the men, kidnap all the women and children as slaves, and take everything of value. And that was not an unusual thing. That kind of thing happened all the time. You read the Old Testament, that kind of stuff was happening all the time. You needed a wall if you were going to be protected. And if a army decided to attack a city with a wall, it was a difficult thing. They would camp around the city. They would either try to starve the people out, which could take months, which could take years, because the people were ready for that kind of thing. They had a source of food and water within the city. Or you tried to break down the wall somehow. Usually they would build a ramp, a siege ramp out of earth or whatever they could find, a siege ramp up against the wall to get higher, and they would use some sort of primitive battering rams to break through the wall. And of course, they had to defend themselves from the people in the city while they were doing this. But once that wall was breached, once that wall was broken through, then the enemy army could flood in, and they could take the city. And the writer of Proverbs says that picture of a city whose walls are broken through is just a perfect picture of a person who lacks self-control. A person who lacks self-control is a person without walls, where that which wants to invade and plunder and impoverish their life can just flood in. A person without self-control is going to be invaded and plundered and impoverished by their very desires. If you can control your desires, then you can grow and you can work toward and experience the things that you really want. Here's the deal. If you have self-control, then you can work toward and you are protected in order to grow and experience the things that you really want. If you cannot control your desires, you will serve those desires, and they will not allow you to really experience what you care about. You will be continually frustrated, continually impoverished. Maybe right now you are experiencing a lot of financial frustration. Maybe you're kind of in a continual sense of financial frustration. You struggle to pay the bills. And if you're married, it causes friction in your marriage. It's just this constant stress in your life. And you think that what you need is more money. And most likely, that is not the case. That is rarely the case. Most likely, what you need is self-control. Because we see something that we want, and if we can stretch to get it, get it. We want to do something, and if we can possibly stretch to make it happen, we do it. And it's enjoyable for a while. We get spoiled to it. We grow to depend on it. And yet then we enter the slog of trying to pay for it. And what seemed to be improving our lives ends up being this constant stress, constant struggle, and it destroys. It just drains us of life. It impoverishes our life, not just financially, but our entire life. We are plundered and impoverished by our desires because we lack self-control. I have a friend, talking about relationships, I have a friend who goes from woman to woman, from marriage to marriage, girlfriend to girlfriend, just one after the other, and everyone ends badly. And his life is just a kind of this continual train wreck. And he thinks, my friend thinks, that the problem is he just hasn't found the right girl. Just thinks, man, if I just find the right girl, I've just made bad choices. I haven't found the right girl. And I say to him as gently as I can, but I say to him, what you need is self-control. Because your desires are ruling your life. Your desires are taking control, and they are plundering and impoverishing your life like a city whose walls are broken through. For many of us, our lives may be hooked on seemingly harmless things. I mean, some of us may struggle with drugs or with alcohol, and you are experiencing how that impoverishes, how that destroys your life if you're controlled by those things. But a lot of us we have more harmless things that take control. We binge watch TV, Netflix. We spend a huge amount of time absorbed in a hobby. We have our phone that we're constantly going through, constantly running through, constantly inputting stuff into our mind. Some of us are so buried in our stuff and our little technology things that we miss the relationships that are right around us. And even more than that, we miss the life that God desires for us. So many of us allow things to just suck our time. Those things, they're not evil in themselves. They're not necessarily bad, and some of them might be, but they're not necessarily evil in themselves. They just drain our time. They are time sucks, and they drain the energy and the time out of our lives so that there's very little room for God. Here's the key. So that there's very little room for God to give us real life, to give us what we really want, because we don't get what we really want from all these surface things. And a lot of us know it. A lot of us know that our lives are too filled with meaningless, not so great stuff, with stuff that just sucks our time. We know it, and a lot of us are willing to admit it, but a lot of us haven't changed anything because we lack self-control. Our wall is broken through, and our lives are being raided and plundered and impoverished, and this will continue until we get the backbone to decide by God's grace and help that we will control our desires and not the other way around. That our desires will not control us. That we will not allow our desires to impoverish us any longer. Now, self-control is not simply a matter of having willpower. Okay? A lot of times we think of self-control and just, having willpower, gritting your teeth and just doing what you need to do. That's important. That's part of it at times. But self-control is about surrender to God. Self-control is about surrendering your life to God. The New Testament letter of Galatians is a letter that Paul wrote to churches. And in that letter, he talked a lot about the flesh and the spirit. And when he said the flesh, what he was talking about was those temporary, human, natural desires that tend to drive our lives. Those self-centered desires that tend to drive our lives. Some of which are not bad in themselves, but that tend to take control. And the spirit, which is when God's Spirit is driving us. And Paul said this. He said, the fruit of your life, the outcome of your life, what comes out of your life if you are controlled by your natural desires, is a mess and is futile. But if your life is controlled by the Spirit of God, the fruit of your life, the outcome of your life, what comes out of you is this. The fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, is peace. You've heard those before, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, and peace, is patience, is kindness, is goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and there it is, self-control. When your life is surrendered to God, when you allow God's Spirit to guide your life, one of the things that produces is self-control. And that self-control allows you to experience that love and that joy and that peace and all those things that God desires for you to have. Godly self-control is a result of a heart that belongs to God. So this morning, our challenge is not simply to man up. This is not simply a deal of, hey, let's man up and let's have willpower and let's, grow some spine and decide we're going to take control of our lives. So that's part of it. Our challenge is to see our lack of self-control for what it is. And this is what it is. It is ignoring God. My problem with self-control is ignoring God. I don't intend that. I don't mean to ignore God. But that is exactly what I am doing. When I allow my surface desires to take control, I'm making a decision to ignore God in my life. When you make a decision to allow your desires to take control, to ignore God, you are choosing spam over a feast. You are choosing a temporary fill my belly to what I really need and what I really desire. A decision to satisfy your immediate desires at the expense of what you really want. When I make that decision, I decided to cheat myself out of life. So, I want us to try to see our self-control for what it is. That our lack of self-control is ignoring God. And that decision to ignore God kills our lives. So let's make a decision. Let's make a decision that we're not going to ignore God in our lives any longer. That we are going to go to Him, that we are going to seek Him out, that we are going to let Him speak with us, that we are going to speak with Him, that we are going to clear out the drudge, clear out the stuff that our little surface desires keep us just all busy in. And we are going to be with God. We're not going to ignore Him, that He is going to be center and control of our lives. Let's lay our lives at His feet and say, Father, you know what is best for me. And you know what is best for your plan in this world and my role in it. God, I want you. I want what you want for me. I will not be driven by my temporary desires. I will be driven by my love for you. And right now, for many of us, we don't know what it is to love God. We just don't. We say, my motive, my ultimate desire that drives my life needs to be love for God. But how do I do that when I really just love me? When I just really love my stuff? When I recognize that my selfish desires have controlled my life, and I don't want that anymore, and I go to God, that God, show me how much you love me. Show me how much you love me, and help me to love you. God, I want you. I want your love. I want your peace. I want your joy. I want it filling my life. And I want it more than I want the temporary stuff that has filled my life in the past. And when I fail, when my natural desires get the best of me, which they will, and which they will often, then I will own it. I'll confess it. I'll repent. And I'll turn back to God. And God, I love you more than that stuff. I'll give myself to you again. So right now, I want to ask you if you're willing to do something with me. I want to ask you just to close your eyes. Close your eyes, and I'm going to pray with you. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just silently or very quietly to repeat after me. When you can. If I pray something that you simply are not prepared to pray, then just don't pray that. But insofar as you can, that you will repeat this prayer with me and that you'll pray with me to God. Would you close your eyes? Father, my God and my Father, thank you for being my Father. You are awesome in your power and your holiness and your goodness. Thank you for creating me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for sacrificing so much for me. Father, I am so sorry for ignoring you. I am so sorry for allowing my natural desires to crowd you out of my life. Today I repent. I am turning back to you. I don't want to be controlled by my temporary desires. I want you. I want to be fully under your control. I want your desires to be my desires. I want your love. I want your joy. I want your peace to be mine. By your grace, give me self-control so that I might have what you desire for me, so that I might have what I truly desire, and so that I might bring you glory. Father, by the precious blood of your Son, purify my heart. Make me new. Fill me with your Spirit and do in me and with me everything you desire. In the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.